It was a night that would forever haunt the memory of Amelia, a night when the man she had once loved with all her heart, the man she believed would protect her through every storm, showed her the cruelest face of betrayal. Amelia was 8 months pregnant, her belly heavy with the child she had long prayed for, her heart still clinging desperately to the hope that her marriage to Richard, the wealthy and charismatic businessman who had swept her off her feet years ago, could somehow be saved. But that night, as they drove down the lonely highway, she realized how wrong she had been to trust in promises that were nothing more than illusions, because Richard's hand on the wheel was steady, his eyes fixed forward, but his silence was like a wall between them, and when Amelia softly asked him why he had been so distant, why he no longer looked at her with the warmth he once did, his lips curved into a cold smile that sent shivers through her veins, a smile that spoke of arrogance, of pride, of a man who had already decided to abandon his responsibilities, and he answered in a voice devoid of tenderness, "Amelia, I'm tired of you, tired of this burden you carry, tired of pretending that this is the life I wanted, marriage, children, routine. I'm a man who belongs to freedom, to luxury, to pleasure, not to sleepless nights with a crying baby and a wife who clings to me like a shadow." Amelia's chest tightened as though a dagger had pierced her heart, and she placed her trembling hand over her swollen belly, whispering to herself that her unborn child needed her to be strong. But Richard, oblivious or perhaps intentionally cruel, accelerated the car, the lights of a distant resort glowing faintly on the horizon, a place he had secretly booked for himself to escape the responsibilities of fatherhood and the weight of a wife who adored him, and then, as though he had rehearsed this moment, he pulled into a remote gas station, its flickering neon light barely illuminating the cracked pavement, and turned to Amelia with a look of finality, saying, "This is where we part, Amelia. I can't carry this chain any longer. You'll manage somehow, you always do." At first, Amelia thought he was joking, that the man she had loved could not possibly mean what he was saying, but when he got out of the car, opened her door, and ordered her to step out, she realized the nightmare was real. She pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice trembling as she begged, "Richard, please, not here, not now, the baby, what about our baby?" But he simply shrugged, his eyes colder than the night air, and said, "The baby is yours, Amelia, not mine. I never wanted this, you know that, but you insisted, and now you can deal with it on your own," and with that he pushed her gently yet firmly away, leaving her standing in the dim light of the gas station, her heart racing, her legs weak, her mind refusing to accept that the man she had sacrificed everything for could abandon her in such a merciless way. The gas station attendant, an older man with kind eyes who had been watching from behind the dusty glass window, rushed outside as Richard sped away, the sound of the car's engine fading into the distance, and Amelia collapsed into the stranger's arms, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering words that barely made sense. He left us, my baby, my baby." The attendant, whose name was Samuel, gently guided her inside, offering her a chair and a glass of water, his weathered face filled with pity, and as Amelia sat there, her hands protectively clutching her stomach, she realized that everything she had once believed in was gone, that her fairy tale had turned into a cruel nightmare, and yet somewhere deep inside, a flicker of determination sparked, a whisper that told her she could not break, not now, not when her child's life depended on her, but the road ahead would be dark and uncertain, filled with struggles she could not yet imagine, and as the hours passed and the night grew colder, Amelia stared out at the empty highway, her tears drying into silent resolve, unaware that her journey of survival, strength, and ultimately, redemption had just begun, a journey that would test her in ways she had never dreamed, but also reveal the true meaning of love, resilience, and destiny. And though Richard believed he had rid himself of a burden, he had unknowingly set into motion a story far greater than his selfish desires, a story that would prove that a woman's strength, especially the strength of a mother, could rise above betrayal. And the night Amelia was abandoned at that lonely gas station marked not just the breaking point of her marriage but also the beginning of a journey she never imagined she would have to take, for when the dawn came and the weak sunlight filtered through the cracked windows of the small service station, Samuel, the old attendant who had offered her shelter, urged her to think not of the man who had betrayed her but of the child within her who was waiting to come into the world. Yet Amelia's heart ached with every beat, torn between disbelief and the raw pain of rejection, and as she tried to sip the warm tea Samuel handed her, her trembling fingers betrayed the turmoil inside her, because memories of Richard flooded her mind. His smile the first day they met at the university library, his charming words that made her believe she had found her forever, the passionate vows he spoke on their wedding day when he swore to protect her until his last breath, and the dreams they once shared about building a family together, all now reduced to ashes by one cold act of abandonment at a gas station on a forgotten road. Samuel, sensing her despair, told her gently that sometimes life tore away what was weak to reveal what was strong, that perhaps Richard's cruelty was not the end of her story but the forging fire that would make her indestructible, and Amelia, though still broken, listened, because his words reminded her that she was not entirely helpless, she had something far greater than wealth or luxury, she had the strength of a mother. And as days turned into weeks, Amelia found herself forced to adjust to a new life without the comforts she once took for granted, moving into a small apartment above the gas station after Samuel, who had no family of his own, offered her a place to stay, and while the conditions were modest, a creaky bed, peeling wallpaper, and the constant hum of trucks filling their tanks downstairs, Amelia began to build something far more precious: resilience. She spent her mornings reading books about motherhood, her afternoons working part-time at the gas station counter to save a little money, and her nights whispering promises to her unborn child that she would never let them feel the emptiness she now knew so well. But even as she worked hard to move forward, shadows of the past followed her, because Richard, oblivious to her struggles, was basking in the glow of his new life at the resort, surrounded by champagne, laughter, and women who admired his wealth, convinced he had freed himself from responsibility. Yet destiny has a way of humbling the arrogant, and whispers of his cruelty eventually reached the world beyond the walls of his luxury, for one night, a journalist staying at the resort overheard Richard drunkenly boasting to his companions about how he had left his pregnant wife at a gas station and walked away without looking back, laughing as though it were a story of triumph, not shame, and that journalist, disgusted by the confession, penned an article that went viral, exposing the ruthless heart of a man who had once been admired as a successful businessman, and overnight Richard's empire began to crumble, investors pulling out, partners distancing themselves, and his carefully curated image as a self-made millionaire tarnished by public outrage. Meanwhile, Amelia, unaware of this storm brewing in Richard's world, focused solely on bringing her baby into the world, and one stormy night, as the rain lashed against the windows of her tiny apartment, she felt the unmistakable pain of labor, her cries echoing through the narrow halls, and Samuel, panicked but determined, rushed her to the nearest hospital, gripping her hand tightly as doctors wheeled her into delivery. And after hours of pain, sweat, and tears, Amelia heard the most beautiful sound she had ever known, the cry of her newborn son, a cry that filled the void left by betrayal and replaced it with a love so pure it was almost unbearable. And as she held the tiny bundle in her arms, whispering, "You are my world now," she realized that Richard's abandonment was not her end but her beginning, for she had something he would never understand: unconditional love. Weeks turned into months, and Amelia embraced motherhood with fierce devotion, working tirelessly to provide for her child, saving every coin, and slowly learning that her worth was not tied to the man who had left her but to the strength she carried within herself. And as her story quietly unfolded, fate intervened again, for a local community group that had read the viral article about Richard discovered that Amelia was the woman at the center of it all, and when they reached out to interview her, the world heard her side for the first time, not bitter, not vengeful, but strong, resilient, and inspiring, a story of a woman abandoned in her most vulnerable moment who chose to rise instead of fall. And soon donations poured in, job offers came, and Amelia found herself standing on stages as a speaker, sharing her journey to empower other women who had been left broken by betrayal, her son always smiling in the front row as her reminder of why she had survived. Richard, on the other hand, lost everything, his wealth seized by creditors, his friends vanished like smoke, his name dragged through courts and scandals, and one day, broken and desperate, he showed up outside the very gas station where he had abandoned Amelia, hoping to find forgiveness, but when he saw her stepping out of a car, holding her son's hand, dressed with dignity and confidence, surrounded by people who admired her, he realized he no longer had any power over her, for she looked at him not with anger or longing but with the calm indifference of a woman who had outgrown her pain. And though he fell to his knees begging for a second chance, Amelia simply told him, "You left me when I needed you most, and that was the day I stopped needing you forever," and with that she walked away, her son's tiny hand gripping hers tightly, the past behind her, the future glowing with hope. And the gas station that had once been her place of abandonment had now become the symbol of her rebirth, a reminder that sometimes the places of greatest pain become the birthplaces of greatest strength. And if this story of betrayal, resilience, and redemption touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because every week we bring you stories that will inspire, move, and remind you that no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes brighter than the darkest night.